Have you ever picked up a book that looked absolutely stunning on your shelf? It had an amazing premise, a ticking clock, dark magic, monsters, assassins, and all the ingredients for an epic fantasy adventure, only to find yourself 150 pages into the story while you're struggling so much to turn the next page. Because with trad publishing, it's exactly where I'm at right now. Today's review, it's going to be a little bit different as well, because we are talking about a book that has all the right concepts on paper. There's a deadly curse, a rescue mission, a mysterious anti-hero, a dangerous journey through monster-infested lands. It sounds like the recipe for an unforgettable fantasy adventure. But sometimes for me, having, all the ingredients really isn't enough. Sometimes the story still has to make you care. And right now, I'm 158 pages into Mayhem and the Moral by Shanora Williams, and I'm finding myself stuck between loving the concept and struggling with the execution. So let's talk about it. And all I gotta say is, welcome to the Rated Rant Podcast!
Welcome to the Rated Rant Podcast, where we don't sugarcoat anything. No filters, no holding back. Just roll out opinions, turn it up, and get ready to rant.
Alright, today we're gonna dive into part 1 of my review of Mayhem and the Mortal by Shanora Williams. And now, right from the opening chapters, okay? This story absolutely wastes no time throwing us into the action. Our main character, Zara, discovers that her sister, Anala, has gotten herself into some very serious trouble, alright? Anala attempted to steal an indigo crystal, whatever the hell that is. That doesn't explain anything what it is. From the powerful sorcerer, Sephirin. Unfortunately for her, she got caught. And Sephirin doesn't really hand out warnings at all. Instead, he places a soul-devouring curse on her from stealing from him. And I think they actually stole it because they needed food, I guess. I forget. But, for me, that wasn't just some magical inconvenience. It's pretty harsh a punishment. This curse, it actively consumes Anala's soul. And she only has 30 days before it completely destroys her. And my thing is, okay, that's a pretty harsh punishment for stealing something that the premise doesn't go into much detail about that whole concept. But she is immortal, she cannot break the curse herself. That leaves Zara with only one option. And I also like to say, maybe further on in the book it explains all this stuff, but right now, it's not. Zara only has one option. She has to venture into the deadly shallows and locate a legendary prosperity stone. It's capable of countering the dark magic before time runs out. Now, let's stop right there, okay? That concept, okay, I love it, seriously. That setup is fantastic. You've got stakes, urgency, a countdown, dark magic, a dangerous quest, monsters, mystery. That is exactly the kind of fantasy story that hooks me immediately. But here's where my issues start to come and my criticisms and critiques start to bubble up, okay? This story throws you into the deep end so quickly that I never really got the chance to connect with anyone. We don't spend any time, much time at least, getting to know Zara. We don't spend much time understanding her relationship with Anala. And perhaps most importantly, we don't spend nearly enough time learning about Sephirin. And that is a major problem. Because 158 pages into a story, I still have the same questions as I do in chapter 1. Who exactly is Sephirin? He's a powerful sorcerer, but why is everybody terrified of him? Why is he considered so evil? What's his history? What made him this way? What is his actual motivation? Because this story seems to assume that readers already fear him because other characters say he's dangerous, but I want more than that. I want context and breadcrumbs and a mystery that slowly unfolds. Instead, I feel like I'm waiting for information that just never seems to arrive. One moment that really stood out to me too was when in the beginning Zara sneaks into Sephirin's keep to see her sister, to see her if she was still alive. And I was sitting here thinking like, bro, what? Wait a minute, hold on. If this guy is supposed to be this all-powerful, terrifying sorcerer, how is Homegirl just sneaking so casually into his stronghold? Shouldn't he know she's there? Like, my dude's, powerful, he's a mage. Surely he has wards up to protect his castle, or he can know that there's somebody that's walking around this thing, there should be consequences, shouldn't there? I feel like the story really wanted me to accept certain things without really earning them. Then we have Thane, our mysterious anti-hero. And once again, concept sounds incredible. He's dangerous, feared, powerful. He's surrounded by mystery. But after all this time, I'm still waiting for the story to give me more, especially, when the cover says a mortal with nothing left to lose, an assassin with everything left to hide. They haven't elaborated on that 158 pages in at all. Tell me why he's feared. Show me his history. Breadcrumb me. I don't care. Do something. Give me a little clue about his past. Feed me enough information to keep me invested with these characters. Instead, the mystery starts feeling less like intrigue and more like a lack of development, and that's a huge difference. It's very rushed, very anticlimactic. Good mystery really makes readers lean into the story, and it makes them lean forward. Missing information makes readers feel disconnected and bored. Unfortunately, I'm leaning towards the second category right now, because the quest itself also feels very familiar to me. Same premise. At its core, it's essentially a fantasy Fellowship Lord of the Rings journey, A group of characters traveling together toward a destination. A dangerous mission, a magical objective, additional companions joining along the way, and that's not a bad thing. Some of the greatest fantasy stories ever written follow that formula. The issue is that many of the encounters and side adventures feel disconnected from the bigger narrative. Instead of building anticipation around Sephirin, the curse, or the larger conflict, it often feels like the story is taking detours. These chapters appear, side quest happens, dialogue fills the pages, and I'm still waiting for the central mystery to deepen. I'm still waiting for those moments that make me say, okay, now I have to know what happens next. And that's where this book is really losing me. Because the biggest problem isn't the action, it's not the world, it ain't even the pacing. It's the lack of meaningful breadcrumbs. And if you're asking readers to stay invested for hundreds of pages, you need to keep feeding them pieces of the puzzle. Give us revelations and clues and character history, and give us reasons to keep turning pages. Instead of I feel like a lot of what's happening is there's filler between the opening premise and whatever payoff is waiting later. The world building also really feels underdeveloped in places. The characters could really use more depth. The relationships could really, really use more emotional weight, and because of that, I'm finding it harder to connect with what is happening. And what's frustrating is that this book is so close. The premise is strong. That foundational groundwork is there. The idea is there. The potential is absolutely there. But potential only gets a story so far. Execution really, really, really matters. And right now, the execution isn't matching the strength of the concept. What's making this more painful is that this book is gorgeous. Like, look at the sprayed edges, man. The book is gorgeous. It's purple, The cover's beautiful. The sprayed edges are stunning. It's one of those books that immediately catches your eye on the shelf. But at the end of the day, a beautiful package can only carry you so far. And as readers, we need compelling storytelling. We need more memorable characters. We need mysteries that slowly unravel. We need reasons to stay invested. And at 158 pages in, I am still waiting for the story to give me those reasons. And I'm not saying I'm going to DNF it, not yet. There's still plenty of story left. There's still time for revelations. This is not a standalone. It's going to be a series. There is still time for character growth. There's still time for Sephirin, Thane, and the larger world become more fleshed out. But as this is part one of a book review, I am still struggling because the concept really has me interested, but the execution really has me frustrated because I find myself getting bored as I read it. And I'm hoping the second half of this book finally starts delivering on some of the promises that the opening chapters made. We'll find out, I guess, when I finish it. Until then, I don't know. I'm having a really hard time picking up and reading it because the story itself seems like it's filler and it's rushed and it's boring and it's trying to do a lot at once. And I feel like that the execution in the beginning was very rushed. It wasn't fleshed out enough to the point where you just jump right into the action, and she didn't go back and kind of, pull herself back to explain things a little bit more. And I feel like she could have did that as she wrote the complete story out because right now I don't feel like I'm getting really any push forward to keep my interest in reading, because right now we're in Burnwood talking to this king who's been to the Shallows, and it's just dialogue, internal monologue, just stuff that just doesn't need to be added to the story at all. And I can't stand that traditional publishing keeps doing that. But until then, this has been part one of my book review of Mayhem and the Mortal by Shanora Williams. Stay tuned for the final book review here shortly. Until then, keep reading, keep ranting, and don't let book talk convince you that a beautiful cover automatically means a great story. Alright, I'll catch you on the next episode. Smash the subscribe button on this YouTube channel. Other than that, reading and rant is out.